Let's get going. Is everybody inside? Good morning, everybody. I'm Isidro Salusky. I work on this issue of training, and my goal is for all of you to get funded. Now, if you don't get funded, you blame me, not me, okay? That's oh, Carol, that's it. So all of us, we are interested in you getting funded. And we do these workshops in order to, to help you in this process. And, there's no one way of doing this grant, but there is a philosophy that, all of us, regardless in which area of medicine you are, you have to follow through. And you have to insist, and you have to love what you are doing. That's the number one thing. And your ego has to come down. All of us, we have big egos, and when you get hit, don't worry about it. The skin has to be thick, and keep going, keep going, keep going, because that's the way things work. So I will focus today on two main awards, the K23 and the K08. There is a lot of similarity between, because they go to any area of medicine, although there are some institutes that they don't have K08, which are kind of more basic science, and the K23 more patient-oriented research. But the components are basically the same, and what you have to do, definitely, you need to check the specific requirement of your own institute, because sometimes there are very minor changes between one institute to the other. So you can check this if you talk to the program officer, as Carol just mentioned to you. And so you need to remember also that these awards are for you, for the candidate. And the candidate is committed to work almost 75% of his or her time on this project. And this is very important, that is well described how you will use we come back to this in a little bit, but also it's important that your chair, division chief, all the people who will be doing letter of support for you state that commitment is for you, except for those who are in the surgical department, that the commitment is 50%. And the other thing to remember is that the length of this award will be 3 to 5 years. And this is important because some of you maybe get into a K12 award or KL2 that Mitch will talk in a little bit. And so sometimes you can have some case award outside the K08 or K23 that it counts within the whole 5-year period. So if you have one of those, then it has to be subtracted. So these are the kind of the main electronic things that you will see, that the component of the grant, and that you have to go through. There are a few minor changes that Mitch will go over later on. But overall, I just been involved in a K08 submission just for last February, so there are minor changes, but it's not a big deal. So it's very important to follow the instructions and the page limit. So obviously the specific aim is 1 page, and this is the meat of the grant. This component, these 12 pages, which include the career development section, your background, career goals and objectives, and then the training plan during the period of the grant. So within these 12 pages, almost 5 or 6 are devoted to this. The other important thing that to keep in mind is that when you are scored, maybe your research is terrific, but if this is weak, you lose points. So you are scored by both components. So this is not something, this seems simple, it's not something that you write the day before. And so as energy you put to write your research component, it's very important that all these different elements, and we are going to go back to this, are equally important. But obviously, bibliography, human subject, this is kind of straightforward. So there are also cover letters that you ask to people who will say that you are a nice person and blah, blah, blah. And also, the important thing is the deadline of these letters. It's also in the instruction that they don't come with your application, they have to go directly to this place. So it's everything instructed in describing the instructions. And as well as the statement of support for mentor, co-mentor, consultants, etc., etc. Appendix, they're optional. It's a philosophical decision. Personally, I don't use appendix. I don't think that I accept it is something special, but if you want to do one, you can always put one. And so, let's start first with your mentor. Because one of the main things that you will be judged on the scoring system is who is your mentor. And this, in my experience, is one of the main problems that many of you have. Because there are a lot of faculty here at UCLA, some of them being great investigators maybe 10 years ago, they made a lot of discoveries, but today they're doing something else. There's nothing wrong with that because people can change. They were researchers, now they're administrators or teachers or whatever. So it's very important that the mentor is a recognized investigator, but not from 10 years ago, now. And the recognition of the mentor as an investigator is simple. Current NIH funding. So I'm just telling you very clear. If your mentor today is not NIH funded, he or she is not the right mentor. So everything's in the public domain. You want to work with Dr. X, you can get in the NIH website, see if he or she has funding, and then you decide from there. But it's very important that you know that this individual has a track record and he or she is funded. And also, that's funded to support your work and his or her work. It's important also, you don't have to have only one mentor. You can have more than one mentor, and according to the role of this other mentor, this individual can be a co-mentor. Yes, you can have two co-mentors, both of them playing an important role because one brings this component, and you explain, and in the letter that your mentor will write, they will explain the role of each of them in your project. So this issue of the mentor, I think, is extremely important that you know from the outset with whom are you going to work. Now, this mentor, and I can tell you, I've been doing this for a number of years, and I can see that over the years, one of the things that I've been surprised is by the number of individuals that have conflict with mentors over the years. So, since you are in the process of picking, or maybe you have already a mentor, be sure that this person has experience, is available, is interested in your work. This is very important, the previous track record with mentees. That, this is somebody with whom people get along. And that they have adequate support, and then you can pick more than one mentor. But again, this issue of the previous track record is very important. You can go back to the track record of publications, how many were fellows or junior faculty, where these people are. You need to know about it. You need to know how he or she worked with you, etc., etc. It's very important that you know from the beginning. We can always have conflict. We are all human beings and we can disagree, etc., etc. But it's important that from the beginning you know which group are you joining and what's the track record. So that, I'll be honest with you, if I were you and starting today, I would spend a little time thinking about with whom I'm working or with whom I apply to work, and ask people. Ask people. That's what you have to do. Once you identify the area that you want to work, just ask people in that area how he or she is, etc., etc. So let's start with the candidate background. So you need to describe your commitment to an academic career. either in biomedical research, any area for either patient-oriented research, etc. You need to describe your professional responsibilities. Very clear, what are you going to do beside the research component. And it has to be very clear how many hours a week or days a week you will do clinical work, because they will know whether you will be committed to this project. Don't forget, we are talking about 75% of your salary devoted to research. So if you have clinics 3 times a week, that will not work. So it's important that time commitment is well described in your letter as well in the letter of your mentor. You can show also interaction with other faculty or scientists. Here at UCLA, you can work with people in public health, in biochemistry, whatever the area of research you are involved. Try to take advantage of all the resources that we have here. Maybe you can make some comments how you got to this level of interest, what happened your previous training, and how you move on to the objective of your long-term career goals. So you need to describe your research effort until this point, including some of your publications, your research interest and experience. Think about how subsequently you will become an independent investigator. And then obviously there will be a statement about your 75 commitment, and this also has to agree with the letter of your chair. It's very important that the story is well written. And I'm telling you, it takes time to write the letter, and this is something that you do it yourself, you do it with your mentor, because there has to be some consistency between the letter that you prepare and then the letter separately your mentor will prepare. And what happened with some applications, and I've seen that before, the mentor never saw, it's obvious that the mentor never saw your grant or didn't go into the details. So there are big difference when the mentor and the mentee work together in the project. So if that doesn't happen, I think you need to be very careful. So you need to set up this goal. What are you planning to do from your prior research to what are you going to gain during the period of the war? You need to justify the need for further career development because you learn X, Y, and Z. This is a training program for you. So you need to tell them specifically that you will get a master in clinical research and you will do something in public health, or you are going to do molecular biology of X. Whatever area of medicine you will be involved, you need to specify very clear what are you going to do. And it's not just that you will take course in molecular biology, you need to be very specific. 124C, 124B, etc., all these classes, etc., the curriculum that you will do year after year. And obviously you can utilize the resources available at the institution. So through the CTSI, many of the things are already available, and you can cut and paste, and the CTSI can provide you a lot of that information. So I insist on this issue of the career training and your mentor is because remember that you get scored for that. So it's a 50-50. So this very specific in the study section for these grants, the career development is scored separate than the research, and that has an impact in your overall score. So you better be sure that this is well designed and well written and very clear, where it has to be a consistent story between you were an undergraduate to resident fellow to junior faculty, and how even if you started in oncology, then you went to cardiology, and now you are going to do psychiatry. It doesn't matter. The issue here is how you tell the story and how you build on you have done over the last few years and why you want to work in this specific area of medicine, and how the didactic program that you are planning to do will fulfill the gap in knowledge that you need to learn in order to move on and become an independent investigator. The goal of this grant is for you to become an independent investigator. And as Carol told you before, even now, when you go to R01, when we are in the study section, there is always a time that the officer said, now we review first times award, first R, that as she mentioned before, they have a different pay line. So when you do the transition between K to R, they go through a different process. So that's just very important. So there are a few, and I know that Mitch will go over. It's just this one came up. I'll be honest with you, I've read some of the things, but the elements are the same. The candidate background, career goals, objectives, career plan, everything, and the research is in the 12 pages. That didn't change. So, and there are a few other things that I'm sure Mitch will go over more carefully. So there's also a section of conduct of research, and this is pretty straightforward. We have it in the CTSI, and there is a curriculum, and it's kind of cut and paste. Now, it's very important that the letters that, what I said before, that your mentor will put for you really describe in detail how he or she will be working with you and how this interaction happen, how often you meet, what are you going to do, what are the goals, and how they are going to monitor your progress by publications, presentations, etc., etc. And so these kind of elements have to be well described, and how your mentor will help you in setting up all these classes or didactic courses that you will get involved. Now, sometimes the mentor don't know much about the didactic component because they are busy in their own area of research, and that's nothing wrong. So that's when you should take advantage of the CTSI, that through the educational program, that you can learn more about options. And as you know, there are some case award examples that you can go and look and see how he or she did it, and then just to give you an idea, what we want is for you to get funded. So if somebody else got funded, I don't have any problem on people sharing grants, because if they got funded, it's just for you to have an idea how they put the structure together. And this is something that I know Mitch has a library with some grants that you can use, and just to facilitate the process, okay? So you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So try to go ahead of that and use those examples to figure out how you tailor to your own project. All right, so enough with the mentor. So there is this section called about key biology. This kind of statement that they want how you obtain materials, and I give you the slides. It's something that I not make too much of a big deal about it. So let's go to the grant now. So as I tell you, so specific aims, 1 page. Candidate information and research strategy, 12 pages. Conduct of research, a statement from the mentors, institutional resources, etc. So this is the most important component of the grant. And so that's what we are going to go over. So the specific aims is 1 page. It seems like not a big deal. But there you can be alive or dead, because the reviewer can get excited when he or she reads the first page and say, oh, this is a bummer. So, to write a grant is to sell something. And when you sell something, you need to do it with enthusiasm or energy, and then you have to say how you convince this individual that they will say, yes, this project is worthwhile funding. So that page is a very important page, because it's the first time that they get in touch with your grant. And there in 1 page, everything is written. And then we have the research strategy with this. We are going to go over each of these sections. There is a section of significance that is important, what is in the field, and what you bring new, what are the gaps, and how you try to fill it. And then there is a section of innovation and the approach to the problem. So the aim. The aim, as I mentioned to you, is 1 page. So in this we have the first paragraph is an introduction of the topic. But it has to be broad, but it has to provide a specific information to how you go down to your specific topic. So if you are talking about cardiovascular disease is the leading cause of death in patients with chronic kidney disease, fine. But as you can see, it's very broad. So there, how you tailor to what are going to move on to your area of specific interest. So it has to have a concise statement about the expected impact of your study and the objectives of the study and how these lead to the specific aims and the hypothesis that you would like to raise. This page, you write it 100 times because it takes a lot of time to write this page. You have to focus, and focus. And you need to be very clear that there is a consistent message between the first introduction about the problem, how you focus to the specific issue that you want to study, the lack of information on that specific issue, and then how, maybe if you have some preliminary data, maybe it can help you raise some questions that will lead you to the hypothesis that you would like to test in that specific aim. And this obviously change according to you are doing some work in the basic science versus you are doing a study in patient population or versus you are doing studies in patients in general, typical clinical trial or asking some physiological questions. So all those things are very important, and in that context, you need to figure out how you put this specific aim. But this aim is critical. This page is critical. So, and they are obviously your mentor, and when you look about other grants, you will see how much emphasis or how people put the structure together. So the second section that we go to this is what we call the research strategy, which I told you is 12 pages, but 5 or 6 are already taken by your career development. So you have another 5 or 6 for the rest of the research strategy. So you can see how you need to balance what you would like to include with the number of pages that you have. So when you go to the significance, in general the significance is maybe 1 page and a half. And there you can outline the background of the proposal. You need to do a critical evaluation of the topic that you are going to study. There are data, there are supporting data, conflicting data, and your own data if you have something. And there is very important where you look about the gaps in knowledge between what is being done, what you would like to raise, and that's how this you link to your specific hypothesis. And then at the end, obviously, you can conclude about kind of more broad long-term consequence of the study that you would like to study. Now, it's important once you set up your specific aims, maybe you can have 2 or 3 more or less, but it's important that throughout the significance, some of these hypotheses come up. Because if you say there is a lack of knowledge on this, and then my hypothesis, our work, we plan to do this, if our results support this hypothesis. So you need to link your first page with the significance of the problem. And it's not a review of the topic. It's important that you need to figure out what are the key topics or sections in that specific area that you want to highlight. And maybe you can develop new concepts. Now, it's important, this is a critical thing, in obviously that you will do a very careful review of the literature. And you need to understand that when you do this review of the literature, some of the authors of those papers maybe are sitting in the study section. So, first of all, you always need to know, is in the public domain, who are the members of the study section. And they need to be diplomatic, because if your findings are against Dr. Smith's finding, which fine, it's not a problem. But the way that you set it up, it has to be, you cannot tell them that these are the wrong data that he published or she published. So you need to be very precise, you need to be very diplomatic, and you need to understand, that you don't forget also important papers in that specific field, even they are contradictory to your findings. Because you don't know among those people sitting in the study section who will be your reviewer. And these people, because it's our peers, are people from other universities that we are called to the NIH and do this review. So there are people in your field, they know the literature by heart. And so this is very important that you keep in mind. So, and it's important that you need to make the reviewer, the task of the reviewer easy. You can't start the story and then you follow a specific pattern. Don't forget that the reviewer has maybe 5 or 10 grants to go over, and all of us people are busy, they do it at night, in the morning, in the plane, in any different circumstance. And if yours at the end of the pile and it's at night and I am tired, you will pay the consequence of that. So you need to make the task of the reviewer easy. Explain what you plan to do and follow the sequence of elements that you would like to test. So be very important where you put figures and tables. Because if you want to develop a new hypothesis about something, it may be you can put it in the significance. So initially he or she knows that, this guy wants to do this. So you need to figure out where you place those tables. Now, this section called innovation. In general, maybe it's half a page, 3/4 of a page, and people can have different opinions about that. But that's more or less what people use. So here you need to, why this is important? They will ask you this. You are, for each of these significance, innovation, and you get score. There is a little form that we fill out and we put score for each of these sections. So focus the attention of the reviewer, making an interesting point. Sell your story. That's very important. Provide new information, either from you or from others, and offer new perspective to why this issue is so important. Describe how the specific aim or hypothesis will fill gaps in our current knowledge, and together aim, significance, and innovation will provide a compelling story about why they're supposed to justify your project. So if you don't repeat what you have done before, it's an issue about what is the innovation that you are bringing to the table, and why which are the consequences. It could be the same thing for basic biology to patient care research, it doesn't matter. And then here is what we call the approach. The approach is around maybe 3-4 pages. That's the end of the story. So I told you already 1.5 pages for the significance, another half a page for more or less for the innovation, and now the approach. The approach is what are you going to do? So you have 4 pages where you need to address each of the specific aims and what are you planning to do. The methodology that you're going to use, the problems, you always need to think about problems, alternative strategies, you need to think about, because not everything will be pink. So you need to think about alternative hypotheses if something doesn't go the right direction. So the way that there are many ways of doing, and there is no one way, and you can look at different grants, people have different approach. So I give you a few. So you need to address each of the aims. Well, the number one is you put name aim 1 in page 1. So we are in page 7. If you are going to talk about aim 1, you don't say aim 1 as stated in page 1. You cut and paste page aim 1 again, and you explain exactly you are referring to a specific M1, because the reviewer already forgot the title of your M1. So you need to, the way that you tell the story, you make things easy, and you know what type of hypothesis you want to study. You outline each of the experiments that you will do for each of the aims. For example, one way of you doing a study is, for example, you do a clinical trial, for example. So you can have a general overview, the study design, the laboratory, the statistical procedure that you would use. And then you have that would be one specific way of setting up the general state overview, and then you address each of how the clinical trial will address each of the specific aims that you are planning to study. That would be one example. And then you will go to a specific studies or experiments that according to what you plan to do. For example, if you go like this, the project is the instrument that you will use, the study population, the recruitment, the longitudinal follow-up. In a laboratory study, the cell tissue culture, the specific analytic methods that you will use, how precise are those methods, and whether you have some experience in doing this type of experiment. Now, the experimental is very important that you have to provide details, because how are they done, where do you obtain, the data, how you are going to analyze the data, the expected results, you need to talk about that, and what type of conclusion you are planning to find. And that's what I was telling you initially. Okay, they have expected findings, but you always have to think at alternative interpretations. So you always have to think about, put some statement that maybe if this doesn't work, the other one we will do. If I don't have enough power to do the clinical trial, we'll use this. Whatever you apply, obviously I'm very general on these things, but it's important to think about alternative explanations, alternative interpretation of the results. And also, you need to relate those interpretations to your specific aims and hypotheses. So, for experimental studies, for example, you can do, to address a specific aim 1, I do experiment 1 and 2, and for the aim 2, 3, 4, and 5. So, for the aim 1, you have this type of, the procedure you will do, and the analysis and interpretation. And so, what they are going to look from you is whether you can do this work, whether you are qualified to do this work. Do you have the technical expertise? Do you have the resources to do the work? And have you done this before? Or how expert is your mentor on doing this type of work? Or maybe you got expertise from a university in New York. How you and New York will work on this process? Well, how they are these days people can work from centers all over the country, all over the world. So whatever this other institution will bring to your grant, this interaction needs to be very well delineated. And obviously, this is an issue that previous background and publication. So the question that you will raise is how many publications you need. And that, I'll be honest with you, I don't know of a magical number. Maybe varies between a study section, 3, 4, 10, I don't know. I don't think I tell you is that one of my junior faculties, just in last February, he submitted a K08 with very few publications, maybe 3, and got an outstanding score. So they didn't criticize that has such a very few number of publications. They like the story, etc., and they gave him a very good score. I was very concerned. I told him when we put the grant together, he will come back, we have to go back, and let's get a few papers in the pipeline, because I'm sure they will criticize limited number of papers. But the study section, that's how they work. But this is an issue. maybe some of you have experienced that people say, oh, he or she didn't have enough publications. So I think it's important to have a few publications. The numbers, I don't know. I think if you put a good application with a good component of, your story, I think that's what it counts the most. So it's important. It seems like a statement from the consultants or mentor. It's very important that these issues are well written and consistent with your grant, because sometimes you see that they are totally different. They are not associated or linked one to the other, the letter of the mentor to your research project. So this is something that you have your mentor, you have collaborators, a number of people that are part of your grant, that you need to be sure that everything is coordinated. Lisa, am I forgetting something? You're here. I thought Alisa wanted to say something to me. So there is something called for clinical trial, what we call data safety monitoring. That there is something that kind of pretty straightforward. A group of individuals that will monitor your clinical trial, and this varies a lot according to the type of grant that you will do. The letters, I mentioned that to you before, that they have to be submitted no later than the submission date. This is very important. The environment, I mentioned that you can use CTSI resources, and you can see that we have all the different components that you require for your grant application, and it's pretty straightforward. The institutional commitment, this is very important. That's your chair. Your chair, he or she need to be clearly right that you will have this 75-time commitment. If that is not well written, this will never fly, okay? So it's very important that you get that type of commitment. So a special requirement from the institution, CTSI is always a good thing to include, because in itself, that proves that the institution have a lot of infrastructure to support your project. So you need to take advantage. And as I mentioned before, you can look about how other awardees have done it, and you can tailor specifically to your grant. Well, that's kind of more or less the different things that we do. Letter from Dr. Dubinet, all these kind of resources that we can provide you. As Carol mentioned to you, since December, now you make more money. So now the salary is $100,000 per year for your 75% time, and this is very important. And I think this is my, I think we can, this is I put this slide, you have it in your slide, because this is what are the new career instructions. This is the flyer, so you can go to the NIH website and check it out. Just minor things about loading PDF file that I don't know how it works, but you need to go into details about some minor changes that they did. I think maybe Mitch will go over some of these issues. But this is the volume of the issue of NIH where they have all this detailed information. I think this is the end of my talk. I thank you very much. I'll be happy to answer questions, or we do it at the end. Maybe Mitch, you come now and you do the. Mitch, you want to, or we'll be happy to answer a few questions. So we do it later when you finish. Yeah, we do it when Mitch finishes. Okay. Thank you.